Right, let's get deep and hard into the heavyweight division with the 8-0 heavyweight Johnny Fisher. Right, tell me, sir, if you were Fraser Clarke and you've been calling out Fabio Wardley, we were at the event the other day, I spoke to him live about it. Yes, he said, I want to fight Fabio Wardley. Both unbeaten, up-and-coming young British heavyweights as you are. Great matchup. Very exciting. Fabio lets his hands go. Former white-collar boxer, turned pro. Fraser Clarke, decorated amateur, Olympic medalist. I think that's an O2 Arena fight. And suddenly, his promoter, Ben Shalom, pulls him out the purse bids with Eddie Hearn. How would you feel if you were Fraser Clarke?
To put it lightly, very frustrated, angry. I saw Fraser Clarke, what he's on the Instagram story he put on. He looked very, very frustrated in what he was doing, still training hard, of course. As you said, a great fight for himself. He went into purse bids. They would have earned a nice bit of money out of it. It's a great matchup. It's the unknown of Fabio Wardley, who seems to put it out of the bag every time he's in a little spot of bother. Against the pedigree of Fraser Clarke. It's an interesting matchup.
Boxer against brawler.
It is boxer
almost
against, or someone who's a fighter or a scrapper. And it's an exciting fight which captivated the boxing public. And
I mean brawler in a complimentary way, because Fabio likes to let his hands go. A scrapper, like you say. But we spoke to Fabio Wardley this week, and the undefeated British heavyweight joined talkSPORT Drive and gave us his thoughts on why the Fraser Clarke fight hasn't materialised.
There was rumblings of all of this, and I said, look, you need to go find your promoter, grab him by the scruff of his neck, and have a serious word with him. And his response was, look, mate, he was like, look, I want this, but there's just other things going on, basically. I can't speak to his situation. It's not fair for me to do so. I don't know entirely what's going on with him, but like I say, I do believe he did want the fight. I just think he's in a sticky situation with a not so great promoter who doesn't seem to have his best interests at heart.
Maybe that's fair in a way, but also to give Ben Shalom and Boxer some kind of leeway here, even though it looks like Fraser Clarke's been hung out to dry. They didn't want to lose a purse bid and lose it from Sky. They didn't want Fraser to go on another. It's a promotional battle in many ways. Obviously, you're an Eddie Hearn fighter, so in many ways, will this just blow over and they'll meet later on?
They will meet. They will inevitably meet. It builds it up for the future for a fight. But if I'm correct, I think it was Fraser's management 258 who ordered the fight through the board of control, and then Ben Shalom's the one who's pulled it out. And I can see why Ben Shalom's probably done that.
I can as well.
Because he's their investment, he's their big heavyweight. They put a lot of money into him. He's only, 5 or 6 fights in, not had an 8 or 10 round. He's not had a 10-round fight yet. So they're probably thinking, hold on, give him a couple more fights and then he'll be ready for it. But Fraser, I know Fraser, he's a great guy, he's a game guy, and he's obviously seen the opportunity and he knows, listen, I can give Fabio a good fight. And it's frustrating not only for them two, but us as boxing fans as well.
It is, but I also think the bottom line with this is it will actually sell the fight down the line. It's very early for them both in lots of ways. I don't blame Ben Shalom for doing it. I think he has protected his interests here. I think Eddie Hearn was playing games with them as well. The purse bid was ordered. Eddie Hearn's now saying, well, why did you go for the fight anyway? It doesn't matter. We will see it. I don't think, as you say, Fraser's got no fear of Fabio. Fabio's got no fear of Fraser. No. It just... He's upset right now, but they'll come through.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it could be at the end of the year. He could have a 10-round fight, Fraser, and then at the end of the year, he could have a big dust up at Christmas time, which would be great in the O2.
He's been unlucky with opponents pulling out and stuff as well, and he's had late replacements and all this kind of thing. He needs, in my view, I don't mind. I think he needs a couple of more solid performances, get a few more rounds in the bag, or knock people's spark out, and then we'll see it. I think we'll see it in a year's time.
Well, Fabio himself has had, 14, 15 fights in, and Fraser himself, although a decorated amateur, is only 6 fights in. It is a different game going to professional. And I sparred loads and loads of rounds with Fabio. He's an experienced guy, and I've seen the last year to 18 months the development of him. He's got a great coach in Rob Hodgins, but he's also moved to Ben Davison as well to get a little bit more expertise, and it's really paid dividends. I've seen that myself. So he's got to be in tip-top condition to fight Fabio Wardley. He's no walkover.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing the finessing of both of those heavyweights. Moving to the other scale of the heavyweight division, Tyson Fury against Oleksander Uysk reportedly back on, even though we're also hearing that Usyk is being lined up to face Daniel Dubois this summer to defend his WBA heavyweight title. Mandatory, of course, Daniel Dubois is. Bob Arum this week revealed that he has held talks with representatives from Saudi Arabia. Obviously, this lends itself to fights happening. It also includes Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, November, December time in Saudi Arabia, who want to invest in the heavyweight division. As Arum said this week, Johnny, we know these people. We work for them in connection with the Jake Paul and Tommy Fury fight, so we know who the players are, and we've had some very interesting talks with them. However, Usyk's team are currently focused on securing his next fight, as I say, against WBA mandatory Daniel Dubois. They move on after that happens.
Yeah.
Do you think Fury and Usyk fight in the winter?
I think so. All the talk has been having. We just heard Derek Chisora there a half hour ago saying that it's looking very, very close. And for that fight that we looked like, for all intents and purposes, was made between Fury and Usyk, for it to so suddenly be called off, there must be a big plan happening in December time. This is the nature of these big heavyweight fights where there's so much money at stake, the different players, the promoters, the broadcasters. There's so many different variables that have to be right. And hopefully we can see it in the winter with a big player like the Saudis coming in and putting all the money right, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to at that top level. They want to be reimbursed correctly.
You're a boxing fan. You mentioned the fans earlier, the fights the fans want. It's not been a good time for heavyweight fights collapsing. Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua 2.5 years ago. Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua last December, although I never thought that fight really was going to materialise. Tyson Fury against Oleksander Uysk restaged 2 or 3 times a week ago, 2 weeks ago. We thought we'd be there at Wembley Stadium with 90,000 people, 100,000 people for the undisputed heavyweight title. When heavyweight boxing is strong, the sport is strong. So from your perspective, do these guys who earn tens of millions of pounds, I'm certainly talking about those top 4 in Fury, Usyk, Wilder and Joshua, do we need them to step up a little bit more and not play the end game all the time?
Yeah, listen, it's very, very frustrating watching as a boxing fan. We all want to see these fights, but I see it from the fighter's perspective as well. I see these guys who've worked their whole life. They've earned millions of pounds already, yes, but they're thinking in their heads they want to maximise as much money as they can possibly get. To us, it's like, what's the difference between 10 million and 30 million pounds, or 10 million and 20 million? It's all big amounts of money, but to them, they're thinking about their worth, and there's a lot of ego at stake when you're at that top level as well.
And greed.
Yeah, it is, but it's the nature of, it's human nature. And who am I to tell someone or make a comment on Tyson Fury or Usyk or Joshua wanting to get as much money as they can? To me, in my opinion, I've got no right to comment, because they've earned their right to be there and they can call the shots that they want to do. And if they don't want to do it, it's up to them. But they'll want to make sure if they do it, they're getting paid correctly.
Well, so the logical question for me to you is, when you've had that Vegas fight and you've won the world title, are you going to sit back because you want 20 million, not 10 million for your defence?
For me sitting here now, I'll probably say no, because £1 million sounds like a huge amount of money to me, let alone 10 or 20 million. But I suppose when you get to them top levels, and it's not as simple as that. You've been around that money and different things come into play. But yes, in my head, I'd be saying, well, if I've won a world title in Vegas, why not roll the dice again for another £5 million? Whether it's 5, 10, 20, it's all big money, isn't it? It's massive amounts of money.
What I worry about is losing the fights that we so wanted to see, the Wilder, Joshua, Fury, Usyk, Fury, Joyce, all these fights that, you know, before Joyce lost to Zhili Zhang, I should include Zhang in that as well, before he lost him a few weeks ago. I think I counted about 7 fights, 8 fights, even if we got 4 of them between that group of 5 or 6 fighters, it could create an amazing era for the heavyweights.
Brilliant, great. There's so many great fights. So even Joyce is still in that mix, and he'll still be up and about there. But I think back to like Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson fighting, that happened later than it should have.
Very late.
It's very, very hard to match these fights when 2 camps are at the peak of their powers, or they're both got their own market value. It's very hard to make these fights. But now maybe a couple, like Joshua's coming off the back of a couple of defeats to Usyk, maybe that makes it a little bit easier to make a fight with him, because someone like Tyson Fury would be the A side in that. maybe we can see all these fights happening very, very soon. But it's very frustrating as people just watching from the outside.
In short form, before we go to the break, who wins out of Fury and Usyk?
For me, the good big one always beats the good little one. I think Fury knows it's a very, very tough fight, an awkward fight. It might not look the prettiest, but I'd always favour Fury, not only because of the British bias there, but I just think a big guy can weigh him down. Someone like Fury's got the ability to do that.
And the other big fight they're talking about in Saudi Arabia, Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder. Who wins that one, Johnny?
It's a very, very risky fight for Joshua.
And Wilder?
2-3 years ago, I'll probably say yes, it was. It was a risky fight, but I'm a huge Joshua fan. I grew up watching him, but there has been a change.
You sparred him?
No, I never sparred him. I'd love to spar him one day. He's like one of my role models growing up, but he hasn't been the same. Even when he beat Franklin, he wasn't the same. I just want to see him turn it around.
Franklin was awkward that night.
Awkward.
Made himself a small target. Had worked on his footwork. And was much more elusive.
And people always say...
And he's got heart.
He has. And we say about Joshua saying we need him back to when he fought Dillian White and Povetkin, but that's at that level. And then you get to the top level when you're fighting guys like Usyk. It's a lot harder to be so gung-ho because people can pick you off. That has to change your mentality. So it's easy for us to say he's got to go for it a bit more on that. But fighting at world level is not the same as fighting them guys when you're on your way up. So... yeah, it's a tough fight for Joshua. I'd love to see him win it, but I think that power from Wilder is a big risk for him.
Well, the Romford Bull isn't sleeping in silk pyjamas quite yet. And when he does, he'll still be running at 5 a.m. in the snow in his bare feet.
Well, maybe.